Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Look and Live. You're here with Pastor James Devalon, and I'm joined with my friend here.
I
Hey, Darth Vader is with us from Star Wars. We just want to make sure you know is the real Darth Vader,
from a galaxy far, far away.
far away, bringing some level of wisdom here. Having spent time with isn't Darth Vader Skywalker, uh,
Anakin Skywalker, yeah.
Anakin Skywalker? Yeah, I'm not a big Star Wars fan. I just know a few little something something. Got a long way to go. So what you got for us today, Darth Vader? Uh,
Today we're going to look at Daisy Cousins, who is a commentator from Australia, and she is going to go into why SJWs are psychopaths and how science proves it.
First of all, let's ask the question: what is an SJW?
SJWs are commonly known as social justice warriors.
So, what is the function? What do they do particularly?
They seem to think they're fighting for equality of outcome for everybody, which is not what really
Mm.
America stands for.
What
We
are some of the
want,
things that they're fighting for, such as?
well, they seem to think they want equal rights and things
Mm,
that we pretty much already have for everyone.
it's almost like everyone who is somewhat a victim,
They
according. Yeah.
really play up the victim mentality. They play up the critical race theory ideology.
Mm,
Um, and they also play up the trans rights, the gay
hmm
rights, and all
hmm
this other stuff that everybody's so sick and tired of hearing about.
Yeah, I'm just playing the devil advocate, as you can tell.
Hmm.
But what if somebody were to say, as a SJW, part of their function is to help humanity in some things like that? What seems to be wrong with that? I think that's what this video is gonna help us to understand, right?
That is basically what it boils down to is where the logic in that breaks down.
Mm. All right, thank you so much, and I hope you guys are ready for this. Brace yourself. So, Darth Vader, it's in your hands. I'm gonna unmute it in 3 seconds. Three, two, one.
Hi everyone, I hope you're all well. So we all know that SJWs are hypocrites. They insist those around them adhere to a very strict moral code, but invariably fail to live up to that moral code themselves. They are very tolerant of bad behavior on their own side of politics and are the first to degrade members of so-called marginalized societal groups that they claim to want to protect if those members have the wrong political opinions. Now, I've always thought this was because they are low IQ individuals who live in an echo chamber. But could it be something deeper, something more sinister? A new study came out in July this year, published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology by the American Psychological Association, entitled Signaling Virtuous Victimhood as Indicators of Dark Triad Personalities. It examined the act of virtue signaling and how it may predict those who possess the dark triad of personality traits, that is, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. The
Mm-hmm.
study shows that dark triad personalities more frequently signal virtuous victimhood even when controlling for demographic and socioeconomic variables that are commonly associated with victim status, such as poverty, race, sexuality, etc. It
Pause.
also showed that
There's a
There's a
lot of
lot of
wisdom.
wisdom.
I mean, okay. There's a lot of wisdom coming from this woman. First of all, the first thing I want to say is when you hear virtue signal, how do you define that? Because it's a new word that I've heard. I've been using it myself. But what is the dry cut definition of virtue signaling?
The idea of virtue signaling is putting on an airs about something or a cause that they really don't believe in themselves,
Absolutely.
just to gain social status points.
I guess as an example to that, the USA went to what country did they go recently to play soccer? And they had on LGBT flag imprint in the numbers of their jerseys and so on. So
I
that could be a virtue
that
signal.
that
That's
could
a
be like a virtue signal.
yeah.
Yeah.
In a sense, it's not like necessarily that they I would say, the U.S. soccer team are homosexuals, but they're doing it to somewhat put out a message that ultimately they don't really believe in. And
or
I also,
one of the more famous images that people may have seen is
mm,
during the summer of love. You saw images of people surrounding people at restaurants and putting up the Black Lives Matter fist and
mm,
forcing them at the restaurant to do the same.
mm, virtue signaling, and that seems to be another political term or stunt. It seems to be used for a lot of different things.
Hmm.
A lot, for example, a lot of the climate change advocates, pushers, and stuff.
Oh yeah, Greta Thunberg's
Yeah,
notorious for that.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of virtue signaling. They just make noise concerning the climate while they themselves have their jets and they live right next to the beaches. They have no fear of being inundated with water. And it's like, okay, you
Hmm.
worry about the climate and so on, but you live like a king.
Yeah,
But you want everybody else to somewhat subject themselves to.
live like peasants.
Let's get back to the video.
A specific dimension of Machiavellianism, that is, amoral manipulation, and a form of narcissism that reflects a person's belief in their superior prosociality, predict more frequent virtuous victim signaling. And it also found that the frequency of virtuous victim signaling predicts a person's willingness to engage in and endorse ethically questionable behavior, such as lying to earn a bonus, intention to purchase counterfeit products, positive moral judgments of counterfeiters, and making exaggerated claims about being harmed. According to the study, these results coincide with findings of past research on dark triads that show their willingness to use manipulation to achieve their ends. And the ultimate goal of this virtuous victim signaling? To influence others to direct their resources, whether monetary or symbolic, to the person doing the signaling in a non-reciprocal manner. In other words, pout for clout. Now, the study doesn't mention politics specifically, but
Wow,
it
wow.
does state that the
Pause. I love this video already. Sorry. Yeah, I'm one of those guys who I can listen to this all day. Pop for pause for pop. I mean, what was the term she used?
Pout for clout.
Pout for clout.
Yep.
The first thing that came to my mind was the Black Lives Matter movement and
Hmm.
some of the things they did. And when the question was asked, even Jesse Lee Peterson was asking, what do you people want? I did a video to that. It's almost like they didn't even really know what they wanted,
No.
And Candace Owen herself went and spoke about those 5 demands from the Black Lives Matter. I did a reaction video to that, which I was like, are these people serious? They're asking for white people to give them their home.
Give up their homes
Yeah.
and give up this, give up that
Yeah,
to
give
black
up,
people.
certain bills.
It's
Yeah.
like, are you out of your mind?
Yeah. It's like, well, it makes sense when you hear that they are Marxists, they're trained Marxists.
Marxists, yeah.
I say, oh, there we go. Like, let's take from the rich to feed the poor. While many in those poorer classes have been lazy, refuse to go to school, refuse to go to work, actively doing whatever they want to do. But you want the guy who's been working really hard on his craft to feed your lazy bum in order for you to live like a king.
And just hand it over to you. Just hand you the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's not Bible. I've heard somebody trying to use in the book of Acts where the early apostles, where they said Marxist is biblical. And they were trying to use how the early apostles brought the money and laid them at the no, the people brought the money and laid them at the apostles' feet. I think it's in the book of Acts chapter 9 around there. And I was like, that there is nothing is farther from the truth. When you're trying to use scripture to say this particular passage is Marxist, so the difference
Nothing.
is Marxism demands that the rich do this in order to feed the poor, the bourgeoisie and the peasants and so on. The Bible was not saying that. What was
No,
happening was that people willingly sold what they had because they were moved by the Spirit of God, and they gave that to the movement in the
it's called
early church.
tithing.
It's yeah, yeah. It's like they made an offering, and but the difference with that is Marxism is using laws and order and
And for
fear,
not just laws, but force,
force. Yeah,
force of
yeah,
will.
force to the point of killing someone if they refuse to surrender the things that they want. Is just a form of robbery, but a much very nicely put together in a way.
Hmm.
That's really what it is. You
Yeah,
want you bunch of
and that's
thieves.
really what it is. And
Yeah.
that's the thing is what people don't seem to understand is, in if they try to correlate that into the Bible somehow, it's not possible,
It's not
because
possible.
tithing is a completely separate thing. Tithing you do of your own free will, and even God said, "Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and give
Mm,
unto God what is God's."
good point. Good point. And I think of the Apostle Paul also. That's actually a good point you made here. The Bible says, "A man that will not work will not eat." you know,
Yeah.
and this
Give a
is
man a
found
fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime.
for a lifetime. And this is from there it is. If that will not work, neither should he eat. This is coming from the book of Second Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 10. It tells you that if you refuse to work, you're not supposed to be eaten. And the whole idea is get a job. Stop stealing. Stop taking advantage of those who've been putting in work and thinking that you're deserving of that. That's not okay. Virtue signaling.
You're not entitled to anything.
No, you're not. You're not entitled.
And
All right.
and that's the problem these days, is everybody thinks they're entitled to something.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that's where a lot of people have lost sight of
Hmm.
what it means to be an American. Is we've become so accustomed to
Hmm.
living this cushy lifestyle that we're able
Hmm.
to live, that
Hmm.
everybody thinks, well, I'm entitled to this. I
Yeah.
deserve this.
I deserve.
No,
I'm
you
deserving.
don't deserve anything. Nobody owes you anything. You
Well,
need to
life.
go out and you work for it.
That's right. Life is what you put in. You put in the work.
You get
It,
out of it what you put into it.
that's right. You pay for you get what you pay for. But the thing is, you remember when we did the louder with Carter video when he was giving that recipe for poverty,
Hmm.
and it's just that most of these individuals, right, they're having children out of wedlock at an early stage. They
Hmm.
commit crimes, or
Hmm.
they were heavy abusers of drugs. And what else do they do? They don't go to school.
No.
So the three recipes that he gave for poverty is go to school, don't commit crime, and wait till you get married to have a child. And when you look at that, most of the people that are complaining, stealing, and robbing people either have done these three things or more. And he's like, that is actually true. Like you want to deal with the issues of our culture and you want to be met. Like let's empower people to get to school. Let's empower people to hold onto a job and be dependable and reliable to their companies and so on. That's how you build things up. Let's talk about how to save money. And I think that's another thing too. Is like the schools don't talk about money. If you,
Hmm.
it's one of those things. Like it's a taboo subject. Kids will go to school. They don't even know how to put a budget together. Like let's
Yeah,
talk about that.
that's a huge thing. Like
Mm.
if kids learned how to actually budget money,
Mm-hmm.
and learn how much, well, I
Yeah.
need X amount for this, I need X amount for that, and
Yeah.
I only have this amount. How
Yeah.
am I going to make it work? You
Yeah.
know,
And that's the thing. It's not so much about how much money you don't have. It's really how well you manage the ones that you do have. And if we
exactly.
teach people how to manage money, most times they will have gotten out of debt. The things that we spend money on so loosely has a lot to do with the way our lives turned out. So for us to sit here and make somebody else responsible for our needs that we ourselves have neglected by by not caring for the things we're supposed to and not saving properly, like who's to blame? Nobody's.
Yeah,
It's nobody's business. The rich man is not responsible for this.
you dug that hole. Why should I have to pull you out of it?
You got it. All right, let's move on.
increasing presence of individuals and groups publicly claiming victim status has led to a culture in Western societies of victimization, which makes displaying victimhood advantageous. A culture that, as we all know, has been generated by the cultural regressive left. Certainly, all that virtuous victimhood signaling analysis sounds eerily reminiscent of their behavior. As such, can we hypothesize that maybe, rather than their bad behavior being a result of their rudeness or ignorance or general stupidity, SJWs are, in fact, evil?
Okay, fine, I'm cool, I'm fine.
Okay, let's back up here. There's no reason to get hysterical. We're not necessarily surrounded by potential serial killers whenever we pass a campus protest. Dark triad personality traits exist on a spectrum. That is, different people express those traits in different ways and at different levels. And according to this study, there is a solid chance that at least a few SJWs exhibit one or more of them. But before I tell you just how this manifests in our regressive leftist pals, I have my first ever line of merchandise. Hoodie, mine, writing on so passionate from past experience, risk-taking, pathological egocentricity and incapacity for love, lack of shame or remorse, lack of empathy, impulsivity, elevated sense of self-worth, pathological lying, manipulative behavior, poor self-control, promiscuity, juvenile delinquency, and in some but not all cases, criminal versatility.
It's not personal, Sonny. It's strictly business.
Narcissism.
So, if you go down the line of everything she just said, it's completely contrary. Like you just said, it's completely contrary to everything Crowder said about being successful in life.
Yeah, absolutely. As she was calling out these different names, and I was like, lawbreakers, 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 lawbreakers. I'm like, oh yeah.
Mhm.
There you go. We don't
And
want to abide by principles. We just want to break the law and expect the law to serve, and we expect people to submit and give us what we want while we're doing everything that is causing our world to fall apart. It just makes no sense to me.
yeah, and they want the world to bend to their whims instead of them understanding how the world works.
And I hope people understand where we're coming from here, because this type of video could be easily misunderstood. We're just calling people to be self accountability. That is what we're calling about here. That's we're just talking about. Be responsible, self accountability. I mean, if you are in need,
And
at the end of the
personal
day,
responsibility.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, personal responsibility. If you are in need, at the end of the day, we are one family. There are people out there that will help you. There are those that will be open for you. But the issue we have in our world today, we have a bunch of people who just don't want to work. We have a bunch of people who just
Take advantage of it.
they just take advantage of this system, and they rely so much on welfare, and the taxpayers are just they're just drowning them out. And to top it off, they're still not satisfied, and they just want more and more and more. It's a nonstop greedy behavior. I mean, to me, it's like, why are you doing this?
Hence the summer of love.
Yeah, of course. To top it off. All right, let's get back in.
Grandiose sense of self-importance, again, and a lack of empathy, a need for excessive admiration, and the belief that you are unique and deserving of special treatment. Sounds like almost every millennial ever, but that's beside the point.
You know, I haven't seen this much love in a room since Narcissus discovered himself.
Anyway, in extreme cases, it may also manifest as antagonism, fueled by grandiosity and attention-seeking. In seeing themselves as superior, the pathological narcissist views everyone else as inferior and may be intolerant of disagreement or questioning. This is beginning to sound familiar, isn't it? Machiavellianism is a personality trait involving manipulativeness and deceit, cynical views toward human nature, and a cold, calculating attitude. The trait describes the extent to which individuals adhere to the political philosophy of Italian writer Niccolò Machiavelli. He advocated views involving cunning deceit and coined that immortal notion, the end justifies the means.
Stop
also,
that right there.
by the way, for you Americans,
That was a very piece of it. That was a very strong. There's so much she just said here. I can't. I don't have time to break it down. But Machiavelli,
Mm-hmm.
that Italian person. Did you notice? Have you noticed how Tupac used a lot of his methods in his songs?
He ended up taking his name.
Yeah, Machiavelli, the Don, and so on. he looked to him as an example, but
Hmm.
really, it's still the same spirit of Marxism and communism. It's just a
Hmm.
different version of it. And the end justify the mean component. I've studied this carefully. We can get into some serious water here, but it's just that, have you studied the Jesuit order? Have you ever heard about
Hmm.
what the Jesuit order is? Okay. Not
Hmm.
not these ones we know, modern Jesuits today that are just educators and so on. No, 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 no. I'm talking about the
Old
Jesuit
school.
order, the V for Vendetta type of stuff. Yeah.
Hmm.
That they actually operate under this notion and still do today. A lot of the stuff you see like that's going on in the world, you see the push for climate change. Most people actually look at this and say, it's a demo, these are the Democrats that are pushing. No, 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 boy.
Who do you think's pushing the Democrats?
Listen, that's actually a Jesuit move. All right, it's actually a very religious move. And when Pope Francis came to the United States in 2013, very few were paying attention to this. I was, because I'm one of those guys who like, what in the world is a supposed papa talking to political leaders? Didn't God says the church and the state must be separated? So why is this guy coming in here? He's not preaching the gospel, but he's coming to talk to people in office, and he's giving them his doctrine. And after he left, have you noticed how this climate change agenda exploded on the scene? Have you
Hmm.
noticed how much we've actually taken this thing and run with it?
Hmm.
There's an article written by him. It's called the encyclical for the Pope, which is his agenda while he is in office. It is known as Laudato Si. Look it up, because there's some stuff in there that are very good, but there's some stuff in there that are very much anti-USA. But you have to read into the dotted line to get it, because on average it looks like a good thing, but he's really calling for the same thing she's talking about. But he's also calling to a point where it's like, put the poor above the rich, and going as far as, in the name of saving the planet, to push religious laws into the constitution, where we have to undo with our constitution in order for us to supposedly save the planet, even having a day of rest by law that will save the planet from gas emission. Is going into that deep. It's actually in page 237. It's good to read that. It's packed, but when you break it down, you're like, oh, this is evil, and this is
Hmm.
very much unchristian. It's very much un-Americans. And the sad reality is very few Americans can see it. So when you hear all this climate change talk, and I'm looking at them like, yep, Machiavelli, yep, the end justified the mean, Jesuits, and yep, Pope Francis, is all one big happy family.
Very much so. Seriously, you took the words right out of my mouth. I couldn't have said it better.
Yeah.
It's connected. And now with this FTX thing,
Mm.
you know where the financial backing for it all came from.
Yeah, that's another video that we need to do. Because how is this young guy, Lord have mercy? And you know what's crazy? If he was a Republican,
Oh, they would have strung him up by
the
now.
well, the roof will be on fire.
Oh yeah.
That's what would happen. All right, go ahead. I have 10 more minutes, so let's see if we can get through this in 10 minutes. Go ahead.
Mm.
Tray means trait. Australians pronounce trait as tray, so I'm going to say tray. That is technically the correct way to pronounce it, just so you know. No rivalry. Oh my god, similar to psychopaths who may harm others for funsies, or narcissists who may harm others because they lack empathy, Machiavellians may manipulate or deceive others to advance themselves with little consideration of the human consequences.
I always win, Jack.
And lower away evenly, lads.
One way or another.
Altogether, the Dark Triad.
Curious thing there is, it's
Mhm.
interesting that she used that as an example, because his character in that movie is a perfect example of a Machiavellian trait. He used everybody around him to advance his own personal goals.
Oh, in that movie Titanic?
In the movie Titanic, yeah.
That is actually interesting. I didn't make the link, but yeah, I see exactly what you mean now.
So just real quick, I
Side
wanted
note.
to point that out.
describes a person who is callous, manipulative, and willing to do or say anything to get what they want. They have an inflated perception of themselves and tend to unashamedly self-promote. They are likely impulsive and may engage in dangerous behaviors, right up to criminal activity, with zero regard for how that may affect others. So how does this relate to SJWs? Well, according to the study, quite directly, and can be predicted by the frequency of virtue signaling. Now, virtue signaling, referred to in the study as the conspicuous expression of moral values done primarily with the intent of enhancing one's standing within a social group, is certainly behavior associated with the regressive left. All those buzzwords they insist they embody, tolerance, compassion, empathy, that they are on the right side of history, all signal how wonderful they think they are, and all generate positive responses from their little lefty friends. They then affirm this by lying about and attacking the morality of people that they disagree with, the intent being to intimidate and humiliate rather than critique opposing arguments. In doing this, regressive leftists display zero tolerance, compassion, or empathy, but they gain social capital within their circles thanks to the resources they have acquired from their virtue signaling. That is, adulation, clout by association, reparations, possibly crowdfunding money, etc. Now, call me crazy, but that sounds an awful lot like the lacking in empathy and willing to lie through their teeth to get their way dark triad type to me. The study referred to this behavior as communal narcissism, but there's more to it. The study found that virtue signaling on its own was not enough to really drive those non-reciprocal resources. Participants were more likely to direct their resources at people who signaled victimhood rather than just virtue signaling, and vice versa. This is because human beings have an innate drive to help victims. However, the study showed that people are more likely to be benevolent towards victims they believe are good people. So, virtue plus victimhood equals catching. Frequent virtuous victim signalers were found to be more likely to make inflated claims to justify receiving restitution.
Oh, there is so much wisdom coming from this woman.
See, this is why I wanted you to see this.
Man, this is so good. Oh,
she
Lord.
is she's a firecracker, and
she's
she
breaking
is
it
on
down.
point.
Did you notice behind her the Lottery Crowder Cup? I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So is there a link? What's going on here? I'm just
She's a
wondering.
fan of Louder with Crowder,
Okay, that makes sense.
but
That makes sense. I can definitely get that now.
like I said, she's in Australia. She kind of does her own thing. She tours around down there doing her own thing. She goes on talk shows and stuff. But like,
I like her already.
She's absolutely correct in everything she's
Everything.
saying.
She's breaking it down from a psychological perspective, and it's really like, yeah. I took psychology in class, and then I love psychology. If I was gonna be a pastor, I was gonna become a psychologist. I think it's just an amazing thing. But I think there's something in there you have to be careful with, because you can be a little bit too predictable about certain things, and you can be a little bit extreme. But it's amazing though what psychologists could do. It's amazing what they could do.
But I mean, given what she said so far,
there is
what
nothing.
Is there a group here in the U.S. that we know that have shown all of these traits?
I don't know.
Maybe
BLM.
A certain 3-letter group.
Maybe BLM. Not only them. What about the alphabet group?
Yeah.
There are many more. The climate change advocates.
Maybe Antifa.
Yeah. What about those guys who got mad with Kanye West? Hey, let's go back to the video.
Like, just say.
Let's get back to the video.
For an alleged transgression against them. In other words, dark triad types exaggerate their victim status to gain clout. It's not real victimhood. This tweet from conservative commentator Ian Miles Chung sums it up. Imagine believing you live under fascism and white supremacy when you're free to spew your hatred of the government and white people with the full financial and vocal support of celebrities, athletes, and all major corporations. A perfect example of this complex is actor Jussie Smollett. In faking a hate crime against himself, he aimed to gain both financial and professional resources, as he reportedly did it because he wasn't happy with his public profile and thought that the publicity would get him a raise. Another good example is every 21st century university educated middle class woman who has ever claimed to be a victim of systemic oppression and discrimination by men. Manspreading, mansplaining, manterrupting, the misrepresentation of the gender pay gap, the depiction of DV as a wholly female-centric issue, toxic masculinity, male privilege.
She's killing me. I was just talking about this with my two recent reactions with this, this so-called Black Panther movie.
Mhm.
Is like a chick flicks, where. But the thing is just that these women, this extreme feminist movement,
Mhm.
that stuff is repulsive. Here's the thing they do not realize. They think the more they push against men is the stronger they're gonna become. But they are delusional because by them killing and getting rid of men, they're destroying themselves. Here's another thing also they have to keep in mind. They don't realize how much narcissistic is involved in that movement. For example, you have an issue with the men because you say they are too masculine or whatever, toxic masculinity. I don't know what that is, but nevertheless. But you notice in those, the same women who complain about men being strong and dominant, they themselves take on the same traits and characteristics of men being
Mhm.
strong and dominant. And I'm like, wait a minute. You complain to us about being this way. And
Especially,
then you push us
especially the ones in the alphabet community.
absolutely. You push us in a corner and you behave the same way. Like, the Black Panther movie, he's like, these women are just knocking these men down and beating these men down. And I'm like, oh, please. You really think women in real life can go and beat? At least make it look somewhat realistic. The movie has to be believable to a degree, although I know it's fiction and fake, but it's like these things that they doing, they almost thinking that, do they think we are stupid or what? Like, but
I get the idea of suspension of disbelief, but there's only so much I can suspend before it becomes absurd.
I think we are at the stage of
Absurdity.
absurdity. We've made it. We've arrived a long time ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Mercy.
Like it's just,
Hmm.
and if anything, there was an MMA fight where a trans woman beat up a real woman.
Yeah, I think
and
her name is Falcon something.
Fallon Fox.
Fallon Fox. That was
She,
so painful to watch.
yeah, she was a trans woman,
She was bleeding. The other lady was bleeding.
and she literally crushed the other woman's skull.
He said, "Yeah, I'm coming for you." I'm like, "Yeah, because you're a man."
And it's
You be
like,
ashamed of yourself.
what the heck? You get your
Mhm.
kicks off on beating a woman?
Shame on you.
What the heck?
Mm.
If anything, this just proves women cannot compete with men on the same level.
Absolutely not.
There's no way.
Absolutely not. All right, let's continue. Go ahead.
The patriarchy, the list goes on. All entirely fabricated initiatives designed to signal their victimhood, all of which are easily debunked with logic and facts. See my entire body of work for details. Now, on top of signaling their victimhood, feminists signal their virtue by barracking for other causes to which they bear no relation. That's where intersectionality comes in. They tout themselves as trans allies, POC allies, Black Lives Matter supporters, gender inclusive, etc., 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 preaching tolerance and kindness, and all the while being completely abhorrent to people who disagree with them. And don't get me wrong here, I'm not saying that feminists and SJWs shouldn't criticize people they disagree with, but this isn't criticism. This is rampant thuggish behavior that has nothing to do with the arguments put forward by their opponents. SJWs never engage with opposing arguments.
I know I gotta go, but I can't help myself. I gotta get my mom. I gotta go get my mom. But the thing is, I got 10 minutes. But the thing is, I had 10 minutes 20 minutes ago. But anyway. But she gets up at 11 o'clock, so yeah, it's about 50 minutes away, so it's okay. But here's the thing. Yo, did you see what she just did? She just
Hmm.
put them all in one bucket as a big happy family. And I was like, oh, I can't believe she just did exactly what we were just talking about. I'm like, oh, that's perfect because that's
Boom.
exactly what we're saying.
Drop the mic. We're done.
We knew, like, isn't that what we're talking about? It's like,
It's exactly what we just said.
it is sickening. Oh, the absurdity of that movement. It gets right through my vein.
It's all of it, you know? And
Mm.
it's not just the BLM and all the other stuff. It's the feminists too. It's like, oh
Yeah,
my word, like really?
it's just like it's repulsive. And the thing is, even this stuff is infiltrated Hollywood and everything. It's like the average movies we used to like. The remake is like they put so much inclusivity, like you said, equality, inclusivity. What was the other thing?
Diversity.
Diversity and inclusivity. Those two words are the worst thing ever. But the thing is, they start doing that to the movies. They water it down. Little Mermaid got a new skin color, and all these,
Hmm.
like She-Hulk. What is that? So nothing but complaining and whining and pining. And I'm like, I ain't watching that. First of all,
Mm-mm.
I wasn't even into it all like that in the first place. If you're trying to appeal to me and you come up with all these nonsense, the vast majority of men are gonna be like, "Peace, we out."
Yeah, I mean,
Nobody,
men,
ain't nobody got time for that.
and that's the thing is, men like these comics for what they were. They
Absolutely.
enjoyed them,
Hmm.
and they grew up with them. They know these characters inside and out.
Yeah.
And all these shows and movies, all they're doing is taking these comics
Hmm.
and wiping their butt with them. They're
Just
like,
you said it
here's,
best.
you see your history, you see your childhood. Guess what? It ain't worth the paper it's written on.
There we
We're
go.
just going to wipe our butt with it and flush it down the toilet.
There we go. And we not. I mean, we have to boycott these things. We have to just say, I'm not watching it
And
because when they start losing money, they'll
that's the
make some
thing. You
changes.
got to hit them where it hurts, and
Yeah,
you
and
won't.
I think that's to a degree. There's a pride and level of confidence here that they have that they think we are so successful. We have them in the bag. We can change the story, do whatever we want to do to it, and they're still gonna come and sit and watch because they think we are that addicted to their content. We have to prove them wrong. The people have to say, no, I ain't watching that. No, I'm not
And
putting my money for it. But unfortunately, we live in a world today where people are just like, well, it is what it is. We're just gonna go along with it. The same attitude we have for the past 2 years. We ain't questioning nothing. We
no,
ain't pushing back
and
against anything. And then,
I think that's one thing that Star Wars fans did right is because when The Last Jedi came out, all the
mhm,
diehard fans hated it.
there you
Like
go.
the old school diehard Star Wars fans
Hmm.
absolutely hated The Last Jedi because Luke's character was completely devastated. They destroyed his character arc.
Absolutely.
They turned him into a sniveling wimp and traded him in for a Mary Sue character who was just good at everything she did, no matter what it was. She didn't have to
She
do
is.
any training or anything. She could
She's
just automatically do everything perfectly good at the first try.
yeah, she is sinless. She is powerless.
So
She's powerful and sinless at the same time. Yeah.
all of the fans were so pissed off when they
Hmm.
released Solo, a Star Wars story. It flopped, and not only did it flop so bad, they actually lost money on it.
That's good. That's how it's done. All right. Mm,
So we'll continue. 6 more minutes.
we got this.
They operate purely through smears, intimidation, and telling outright lies about people. They dehumanize their opposition in order to justify breaking their own moral code, and the way they carry it out with such relish and vehemence, with zero indication of the empathy that they're so constantly big-noting themselves for, is pretty psychopathic. And that's essentially what cancel culture is. And sure, while the regressive left deny that cancel culture exists because it's generally them who's doing the cancelling, to a normal person, the perceived transgression of the person the left is attempting to cancel is rarely proportionate to the reaction of those doing the cancelling. J.K. Rowling is an excellent example, Barry Weiss is another. Heck, I'm actually a good example. I've been the subject of large-scale online pylons multiple times. The lefties literally tried to cancel me last week on Twitter because I had the audacity to defend the kid who was forced to protect himself in Kenosha. I ended up trending, they tweeted at my employer, it went cross-platform, etc., etc. And the point is that none of what they were saying about me was true. They literally just made stuff up because they don't like my opinions generally and saw it as an opportunity to try and damage me. Here is a good representation of the commentary that they were espousing. Enabled and empowered by a foreign entity that seeks continued profiteering from the subversion of Australian democracy, traitor and right-wing extremist hate preacher Daisy Cousins has called for the indiscriminate gunning down of those that she disagrees with. I mean, how do you even get to that conclusion? That's literally just making stuff up. But that's what they do. Regressive leftists consistently have willfully disproportionate reactions to the perceived transgression that they are trying to punish, and they love it. They absolutely revel in it. Like, the spite is just shocking. And it is a clear indicator of the lack of empathy, the lack of shame or remorse, and the callous attitude to humanity that the dark triad traits denote. However, redirecting resources to themselves is not the only reason dark triad personalities play the virtuous victim. There is an immense amount of power in being a victim, ironically, which the study refers to as moral immunity. Claiming victim status can also facilitate resource transfer by conferring moral immunity upon the claimant. Moral immunity shields the alleged victim from criticism about the means they might use to satisfy their demands. In other words, victim status can morally justify the use of deceit, intimidation, or even violence by alleged victims to achieve their goals. Still all sounding pretty familiar, isn't it? And in even more of a mind-blowing likeness to SJWs, the study also said that claiming victim status can lead observers to hold a person less blameworthy, thus excusing bad behavior that otherwise might bring condemnation. Finally, claiming victim status elevates the claimant's psychological standing, that is, a subjective sense of legitimacy or entitlement to speak up. A person who has a certain psychological standing can reject or ignore any objections to their unreasonable demands or behavior raised by non-victims. Raise your hand if you've ever been told by a leftist that you don't have a right to speak on a particular topic because you're not a member of a particular identity group that they claim is marginalized. In short, SJWs are ultimately just people who want power and to exercise their inner darkness without the usual condemnation that comes with that. That's what claiming virtuous victimhood allows them to do. And the thing is, I've actually said similar things about them in the past, only then I didn't realize it was potentially all part of a larger personality disorder characteristic of some of the worst people in human history. But is that really all there is to it? Does the dark triad go far enough to explain SJWs? While the dark triad might explain their virtuous victimhood signaling, it doesn't account for the insidious pleasure that SJWs take in inflicting pain on those they disagree with. The sheer active delight they take in watching the usually undeserved suffering of others cannot be explained by a simple lack of empathy. It's simply too potent, too calculated, too sadistic. As such, could it be the dark tetrad is best to describe them? That's another dark personality type that includes not just psychopathy, Machiavellianism, and narcissism, but also sadism. From a psychological perspective, sadism is the derivation of pleasure through cruelty and inflicting pain, humiliation, and other forms of suffering. That package of 4 dark traits, not 3, would best describe the mindset and actions of left-wing extremists, I think. Now, I'm not saying that all SJWs are dark triad or dark tetrad personalities, of course not. Some of them really are just silly or brainwashed at university, and some of them are actually very damaged and just trying to find ways to deal with how bad they feel about themselves. Those people we should feel sorry for. However, there are absolutely people on the regressive left who, if we are to judge them by this study, exhibit dark personality traits through their virtuous victim signaling and exaggeration of personal harm. Beware of these people. They have legitimate, sinister personality disorders plural, and you should be very careful in your dealings with them. The realization that the regressive left is possibly prone to attracting dark personality types is a bit unnerving, but it certainly explains an awful lot.
That is the video.
That was amazing. While you're at it, I'm going to give my final thought, and I gotta run.
Mhm.
Can you go to Galatians chapter 5:14 in your Bible? Uh, so while you're turning there, that is crazy. I wanted to pause like 100 more times, and I'm like, I'm just gonna let it run because she was so on point, and she was on fire. I need to go and listen to this stuff and took some note because something she was saying went over my head. Um, I can't believe what I just listened to. That is actually so powerful. It's good to hear it because you're like, I've been thinking these thoughts. I
Okay,
wasn't.
so I'm not as crazy as I thought it was.
Yeah, I was like, I wasn't able to articulate that word. I'm like, there's something wrong with this. It's like something is not adding up. You're like, there's something about this that's really boom. He's like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you for releasing me, letting me know that I'm not crazy, and
Right, right.
yeah, praise God for it. Yeah, you have that open. Galatians 5:14 explains
Oh,
how.
14. Okay.
All right, there we go. Galatians 5:14 says, okay, for all the law is fulfilled in one word, even in this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as yourself. And the word here is the word love. And Jesus keeps it very simple. All right. And if you love your neighbor as yourself, um, there's some stuff that you just going to have to accept from your neighbor because you want the same for yourself. SJW, they don't even love themselves. And that's the issue. If they had proper self love, not that self centered love that tramples on somebody else's right to get my own, that's not love, that's selfishness. When you have a proper biblical love for yourself, where you know who you are and you're content in that and you can live within your own skin, you want the same for the next guy. For example, love for myself says that I need to be able to speak my mind on certain issues because I want to be heard. So therefore, I'm going to protect freedom of speech. But when you don't love yourself to the point where if you can't love yourself, you can't love anybody else. When you're canceling somebody's speech, it shows how much hatred you have and lack of confidence you have in your own self. And it also shows, ultimately, it shows how little faith or no faith you have in God either. Because you feel like you have to control the narrative. You have to dictate somebody's conscience to get your way. That is psychopathic. That is weak. That is selfishness, and that is evil. I have no respect for that whatsoever. Anyway, that was my thought. I can end it right there.
And even the next verse, and in addition to that,
Go ahead.
he gives us a warning, that in Galatians 5:15,
Love it.
but be ye, but if ye bite and devour one another, take heed that ye not be consumed one of another.
Powerful.
The idea here is that if you're not careful, your overzealous nature,
Mm-hmm.
your words that bite, your words can bite,
Yeah.
and they will devour
Yes.
each other.
Absolutely.
And that's the entire idea of cancel culture right there in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, it is. So by this text is also telling us, just like you said, you were right. Not only your words is doing that, but by the same thing you put out, it comes back and bite you again. In that sense, is we're not calling it karma in Christian. We believe in consequences, or as we refer to that. But the thing is, the same laws that they put in place, the same control that they put in place to control a group that they disagree with, are the same things that are going to come and work against them in the future.
Hmm.
And I think that's
And
what it means. They're going to be
and
consumed.
then the second part, take heed that ye not consumed one
Mhm.
of another.
That's right.
And
That's
what do
right.
what do we always see on the left?
They're killing each
They
other.
always
Mhm.
turn on each other.
Mhm.
When one decides that, you know
Mhm.
what, I don't want to believe this anymore.
And
I
they
don't
tear.
think we're thinking in the right direction.
Uh-huh.
They absolutely turn on them and
I know.
tear the other person to
Yeah,
shreds. It
I
doesn't
see
want to
it.
follow and pull the narrative.
That's right. I see it with the transgender, and anybody who was in the left trying to move over to the right, and especially if you're a black man and you dare to join the conservative party, the
Hmm.
Republican Party, that's a death decree. Uh, so a lot of these issues, I can see them not only politically as well. It's also spiritual too. If you dare to put your foot on the promises of God, don't be shocked. Some family members might go crazy. It might treat you
Hmm.
like you're nutty. Thank you so much for this one, Darth Vader. This was amazing. I appreciate that. We got more coming. Let
All
us
right.
know in the chat. Let us know if you guys enjoy these type of reaction videos where we come together and bounce back on each other's thought and perspective on somebody else's video. Is that something you would like to see more of? Let us know below. So we got more of those coming. Put some recommendation below. And if that's something you want us to do when you recommend a particular video, make sure you say, "I want you both guys to do this," and we'll come together and do that for you. Any final thought?
I just want to say I love everybody in the community, and if anybody needs someone to talk to and you see me online, feel free to reach out.
Appreciate it. All right, do the same. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. Until next time, and as always, remember to look unto Jesus and to live by faith. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.